I can't do it. Okay. We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fuck.
That's my best part. Welcome in. It's day 2. It's September 10th. It's the Daily Puck Drop. We are live in the PuckSports studios built by Limback Lumber Contractors. They offer free deliveries. Everything from whole house packages to homeowner DIY projects. And they've got the largest stock moldings in the Northwest. Old school service because they've been doing it since 1930. Give them a call at 206-782-3487. Visit them online at limbacklumber.com. Welcome in. How is everybody on a Tuesday? We're going to have a real quick opening, kind of just me BSing before we get to our guests, because it's jam-packed here on Tuesday. Things will kind of work itself out as we get through baseball. If the Mariners kind of let us down, then we'll be a little bit more free there with some football stuff. But coming up on today's show, it is a Tuesday. You're going to hear from Rob Staton coming up here shortly. And just because I don't want to lie to you, okay? In the old radio business, and I think most of you have picked up on this, a lot of the interviews, they're taped. How about that little secret? They're taped. And I don't know how many of you know that they're actually taped, but a lot of them are taped. So because of Rob's schedule and timing of things, I had to catch up with him earlier. And so we taped it about 30 minutes. So you get 30 minutes of Rob Staton, SeahawksDraftBlog.com, breaking down the Seahawks. We're going to get to that here in about 10 or so. And then after Rob is over, we will transition. We'll talk a little college football with the great John Canzano will join us. We'll talk about the Alpa Cup, early impressions of UW, of course, the Cougs, Dan Lanning, who's a fraud as a head coach. We'll get into that. Apple Cup, Civil War, all of it. Yes, we're calling it the Civil War still. And then we'll wrap up the show. After that, we'll have another guest. We'll have Bill Krueger. Bill Krueger will join us. We haven't talked to Bill in a while. And his visit brought to you by the Native Youth RiseAbove.org. Haven't talked to him since Scott Service and Jerry DePoto and all of it. So that's what's coming up on the show today. And, of course, we end every show with Hey, What the Puck. How's everybody doing? Are we doing good? The stream is up. Are we good on YouTube? I think so. Yes. Are we good on Twitter? I believe we are. Just making sure that everything is running smoothly and properly. We appreciate it. Jim will be back tomorrow, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays with Jim. And again, it's a little different setup real quick because we're doing it live now at 10 a.m. And I know you're used to the Daily Puck Drop being out at 10 a.m., but now we're giving it to you live. And again, I accomplished it yesterday. We got everything out by 1 o'clock. Yesterday. So the goal is to get everything up there loaded for you there at 1 o'clock today. All right, let's quickly get into it before we talk to Rob Staton. And here's the best thing about Rob, how I taped it. I'll have to do a screen share and put it up there on YouTube. This is going to be the funniest thing to watch me navigate this. You're going to laugh your ass off when you see me do this. But I was thinking about this yesterday because Jim brought this up, and can the Mariners squeeze in? They piss on you for so many months, and they make you so damn angry, but yet they find themselves still hanging around. There's 18 games left in the season, and Jim asked me. We talked about this on the show. What would you want them to do? I mean, I know this comes across as being a bad fan. I'm just being honest. Yeah, there's part of me that wants them to lose every game because I'm so upset with how they've performed this year. I'm so mad how they've gone about their business that I'm kind of over them. So yeah, there's part of me that just kind of wants to see it just all implode and go away. then there's that other part, that fan that brings you back in, right? That sucks you back in because you love baseball, you love sports. They're 3 games back in the wild card, okay? But they're not really 3 games back. They're 4 games back because they don't hold the tiebreaker for any of those teams. Boston's got the tiebreaker on them. Detroit's got the tiebreaker on them. Boston won the series 4-3. Tigers won it 5-1. And the Twins won the series, the team they're all chasing. The Twins won the series 5-2. So they're 4 games back in the wild card. And then they are, 4.5 games back there of Houston. So 18 games left. Man, they're going to have to play their asses off. To try and get in. My prediction is they'll miss it by a game or 2, and then they're going to spend all, off season talking about how close they are. All right. Next 6 games for Houston, they got the Angels and the A's. If they just play decent baseball, although the A's are playing better, they'll be fine. Then they've got the Angels 3 more before they start their series at home, talking about Houston and Seattle on September 23rd. The M's got a quick 2-game series with the Padres. Yu Darvish making just his 2nd start since returning from the IR against George Kirby. I don't know what the hell's going on with Yu Darvish. I try to read up why was he missing so much time. He had like a personal release or a personal time away from the squad, but that just that whole situation's odd with Yu Darvish. The offense has been a little bit better of late. 7.6 runs they've averaged over the last 5 games. I know everyone wants to give credit to Edgar Martinez. I don't know. I mean, is it Edgar, or did they just kind of start hitting better? Who knows? The interesting thing is whether or not he wants to do this moving forward. Brad Adam told me last week that he doesn't want it. Well, I should clarify that he doesn't think he wants it full time. So we'll see. Other news and notes before we get to Rob Staton, then John Canzano, then Bill Krueger. We'll come back with some more content here before we wrap it up with Hey, What the Puck. But Apple Cup week. I thought a lot about this. We got the helmet in the background, the no white flags. It's really weird. It's so odd that it's this week. There doesn't seem to be a lot of juice for it because of the timing and all of that. I think there's a lot of fan apathy. I don't know, Husky fans, you can tell me. I don't think there's really apathy for you all. I think you're so focused on the Big Ten and being a different conference and learning all that with a new head coach and yada, yada, yada. I think for Wazoo fans, there is a lot of apathy. The ticket sales for this thing haven't been good. There's not a lot of Cougar fans going as of yet. Maybe it increases on Friday or Saturday. I got my son's football game on Saturday, taking on the Crusaders of Eastside Catholic. We did not cover to the Inter Bay Eagles in week 1. We're looking to cover this week, though. Coming after you, Crusaders, the Inter Bay Eagles. And that game gets over at 1. We're thinking about going down there and trying to scalp a couple of tickets. Hopefully we can get in. That'd be nice. I mean, the tickets are just stupid. I mean, that's part of it. And I think a little apathy, for fans, too, for Cougar fans, is they just didn't want to play the game. Just to get it. They look at Washington as a school that left them behind and killed the conference, and they don't want to play in it. And I get that. But, they need, I think a lot of us fans need to get it turned around real fast, because apathy can just start snowballing on you a lot. And, John Canzano was on his show yesterday, asked me a good question. Like, what happens if they lose? And I don't know. Talking about Wazoo. I mean, I don't know. It just like, will fans just get more? Will they distance themselves more from the team and the program? I hope not. We'll talk to Canzano about that coming up later today. Our just a programming note for our Old Crimson podcast with Jim Moore and Paul Sorensen. And by the way, Coug fans, Jamie Vinnick's going to stop on by for about 10 minutes or so and give us some news and notes. And then our Cougs Corner. We'll talk to Jake Dickert again this week. That will come out tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. That won't be a part of the live show. The college podcast, those will be a part, just a separate podcast venture, okay? And then for the Huskies, the Puck the Huskies, which is still the best name, with Jordan and Elise, that will come out on Thursday. I want to separate those a little bit. That will come out on Thursday and at 9 a.m. There. as well. Little before we get to Rob Staton, some housekeeping notes here on the Seahawks. George Fant, nothing changed on him day to day. You probably saw that. We talked to Tim Booth and Curtis Crabtree yesterday on the Hawks Nest. They both said, hey, they didn't look good, so I would expect something bad to happen there with George Fant. Still no update there on Ken Walker there with the abdominal. I've always wondered personally where your abdominal is, or your abdomen. I don't know where it's at. I don't think I have an abdomen. I don't think I have. I know I don't have abs, so I tell you that, guarantee you that. The other news that came out this morning, and talked to Garofolo about it. He just said it's strict housekeeping stuff, but you never know. And it was texted back with Condota. They cleared up some cap space with DK Metcalf, so they got some cap space there with DK Metcalf. To clear up some space, about $9.5 million, gives them like $13.4 million now to kind of clear up for the rest of the season. All right, that was a quick one. We'll come back. We'll have more content throughout the show. We'll go to about 11:30. That's the goal. 10 to about 11:30. So we've got Rob Staton's coming up next. Pre-recorded interview that I did with him earlier today. Also, after that, we'll talk John Canzano. We'll talk college football. We'll talk Bill Krueger today, a little baseball, and then we will honor the great James Earl Jones. James Earl Jones, who passed away yesterday with Hey, What the Puck. But again, as I said, we do these interviews all the time. We did this in radio a lot, where we would always sit there and tell people, here's our interview with so-and-so. I'm just telling you, I taped this, and I'm gonna, and I want you now to listen to sports radio today. A lot of the interviews are taped, and it's okay. It's not a secret. It's fine. All right. So Rob Staton from earlier today, SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Check him out on YouTube. It's all brought to you by Superior Linen Service. All of that I say in today's show. So enjoy. Coming up after Rob, we will talk to John Canzano. Welcome into the Rob Staton Show. We are broadcasting from the PuckSports studios, built by Limback Lumber. And, of course, Rob's weekly appearance is brought to you by Superior Linen Service, family owned and operated since 1926. They are committed to delivering the highest quality products and service to the greater Puget Sound area. Get your free quote today at suplinen.com. Give them a call, 253-383-2636. You can stay all up to date with Rob at SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Video content, including post-game show from their Week 1 victory yesterday there, or 2 days ago, I should say, over the Denver Broncos up on his YouTube channel, Rob Staton Football. Follow him on X at Rob Staton. Well, if I would have talked to you in the first half, what would Rob Staton what were you yelling at your television in England in that first half when it wrapped up?
Well, the thing that I was thinking at halftime was, is Ryan Grubb actually going to work out? Have they made a horrible mistake?
Is it over?
I mentioned this on the live show that I did right after the game, was that it had an even worse feeling than when Steve Sarkisian replaced Kyle Shanahan with the Atlanta Falcons after they lost the Super Bowl to the Patriots, because it just seemed very obvious very early in Sark's time that was not going to work and that he would have to go back to college. And that's what happened. And watching the first half made me think, oh my word, this is that, but probably about 5 times worse, because that was really bad. Like, we've seen a lot of bad offensive line football, Puck, in Seattle, and that was probably worse. It just crippled the whole team. Like, nothing could function because the offensive line was a shambles. So at halftime, I'm thinking, I don't know how you fix this. Like, I don't know what they're going to do. Like, it's not just going to be a case of this is so bad that I don't think just getting back on the field on Monday morning or whatever is going to fix this. And thankfully, somehow at halftime, things changed. And thank goodness they did, because I could not watch 17 editions of that. That was really bad in the first half.
That was, and I said it, I just did an impromptu halftime daily puck drop because I just couldn't believe what I was watching. And I said it then, and I'll just repeat it. We talked about it on Monday, and I'll repeat it again today. It was the worst offensive line play I've ever seen in my life, like ever. And I love those uniforms. I hope that we both do. It reminded me, when I was, how old was I? Like 15, 14, watching them play in those uniforms like 1992 and watching Stan Gelbaugh and how bad they were offensively. And I'm like, oh my, I didn't get there with Grubb, but I was like, oh my God, like it could it, because I was so just like the offensive line was so bad. My anger was turning to Schneider. I was like, it's like the Mariners. We cannot find hitters. Why can we not find an offensive line? They were able to do some things, a little bit different in the second half and, eventually get the win. But, the offensive line issue, and we'll get to that. I want to get to it in a second, but I want to talk a little bit more about McDonald. But the offensive line will be an issue. I mean, it's not going to get any better with it, depending on what George Fant's situation is. But just an overall thought on McDonald's debut. I mean, how they went in the second half, and then how they were able to kind of adjust and then obviously pull out the win in there in the second half. What'd you make of it?
I mean, there are positives. The defense played very well. I was very impressed with the linebackers. I think that's something that we talked about, how healthy they're going to be. Are they even going to be available? See them play the way they did. It felt like Dotson was everywhere, all over the field. So I thought that was a major positive. Obviously, the defensive backs played very, very well. I saw one or two people saying, could the pass rush have been a bit more active? But I don't think that the Broncos allowed that to happen, because essentially their game plan was, Bo Nix, you've got to throw this straight away to prevent the pass rush being a factor, or you've got to get out of the pocket straight away. So it took away your Byron Murphys and your Leonard Williamses and Boye Mafe and Derek Hall as a pass rush threat, and brought the linebackers and the defensive backs and the second level players more into the game. And as a consequence of that, they played very, very well. So I thought defensively, very positive, with that caveat of, I mean, I'm not being funny, but how bad were Denver? Like, how bad was that plan? And they're not going to be playing Bo Nix, when the Dolphins come to town, and when they play the Detroit Lions in Detroit the following week. So good defensive performance. Really pleased that Mike McDonald and his staff were able to turn it around and get the win in the end. So look, they got to win. It's 1-0. You take the comforts of that. You take the positives of that. You hope that they can improve week one. I was listening to Jim Harbaugh's post-game speech today, Puck, and
he's such a dork, but I love him. God, I love him.
I'm the same, absolutely the same. And hated him when he was in San Francisco, and just sat there, a tear in my eye watching that post-game. Pleased for the man, and I don't know why. And at the end of his speech, he said, "You will never make a bigger improvement than the improvement from week 1 to week 2." And I thought, thanks, Jim. Like, I didn't expect to get like a crumb of comfort from you, of all people, today to make me feel better about the Seahawks, because they do need to improve a lot on offense. And that's the thing. I am a little bit fearful that we watched the 2 games on Thursday and Friday, a great example. It's offenses throwing punches at each other, putting points on the board, and then complementary defense. If you want to be a really good team, you've got to be able to throw some punches on offense. And I said in a WhatsApp group to my friends while I was watching that game, some of them are Broncos fans, it's like seeing 2 blind dogs barking at each other, facing in opposite directions.
Well, and it's I think what takes the stain, I mean, had they lost, I'm just curious what the tenor would have been. They were able to recover. I think I liked what Grubb was able to do in the second half. Listen, I've talked about this a lot. We make too much about halftime adjustments, way too much. You talk to anyone that's played in the game, I know you have, ask them about halftime adjustments. They'll be like, there's no adjustments. We just go out and do the same thing. We have no time. Like, I think fans think they get in there and it's 15 minutes of like, we're scrapping the game plan, we're doing something totally new. They don't have enough time to do that. Like, by the time they get back there, maybe get their pads off, they talk a couple of minutes with the position coaches, and then it's back on the field. I think what Grubb did is he stayed committed, and I think he called a few different running plays. I think they stayed committed to the running game, and I just think the offensive line and the team just said, okay, enough is enough. Let's get after it. I think that's the one thing where you can praise him, where they did stay committed to the running game. They didn't abandon it and try to go to the passing game. But, I think to your point, what you have to monitor, which will be a storyline all season long, is just going to be this offensive line. Because if they can't protect, I don't care how good Geno can be in this offense or how good DK is and Lockett and JSN, they'll be non-factors if they can't protect him. I mean, JSN had 2 targets? I mean, DK was a non-factor. Didn't do anything. So, and that's because the offensive line just could not give Geno Smith a time at all to throw the football.
It was horrendous. And I was really surprised to look at the PFF grades. They must have really graded them well in that second half because some of them were getting in the 70s. I mean, that Charles Cross was the best left tackle grade in the entire NFL so far. So you just think, well, I didn't expect that level of grading based on what we saw when I would have thought it'd be zeros all round after the first half. Look, it's hard. I watched a lot of the 6 o'clock games, and I was watching the end of the Titans game, and because they were in a close one with the Bears, so red zone kept going back to that. And the left side of the Titans line is J.C. Latham and Peter Skoronski, and they are both top 10, top 11 picks, and that's your left tackle and your left guard, and they couldn't keep the quarterback clean. And you're thinking, even the team that has spent a lot on the left side of their offensive line, and I think they spent a heap on Lloyd Cushenberry to play center, so then the center's earning a fortune. They've invested massive amounts in their O-line, and they can't keep the quarterback clean. And there's probably about 3 teams who can at the moment. And you look at that and you think, if this is a league-wide problem and it's especially bad in Seattle, how on earth are they going to solve this in season? Tomlinson just doesn't look very good. Anthony Bradford doesn't look very good. It's worrying that he's beaten out Christian Haynes. I know he's a rookie, but come on, you didn't draft Christian Haynes in round 3 to have him ride the bench and be a backup. So there's that. Your center is recovering. Maybe that's an issue. Maybe the center not having a bit of ring rust and needing a bit of time is a problem. But they just didn't play well. Then George Fant goes out, and I'm thinking, what are they going to do? They're going to bring Jason Peters again this week and get him back because they can't just have Stone Forsythe and then I don't know, maybe one of the tight ends plays right tackle. What happens if he gets injured? It might not have done any worse. So it's the situation is worrying. And look, they've sorted out the defensive line. And I appreciate that they were probably going to have another offseason to sort the offensive line out. But can we please just finally, Schneider, coaching staff, scouts working with Schneider, personnel department, whatever it is, can we please just put an offensive line on the field that is not useless? I
thought you were going to say an offensive line that's not offensive.
Well,
that's good.
Just be okay.
Yeah,
just be the 16th best line in the league. It's fine.
I think I'm gonna, because it could be a real problem based on what we saw this past weekend. I'm gonna just hold out hope a little bit that Scott Huff is just going to have some time to work with these guys. Here's the problem with football in preseason and not playing in these preseason games. Your offensive line needs the most work together. They need the most work. And it's one of those things where they should be playing. You don't want to risk injury. They need live game reps a lot because they need to be cohesive. They need to work together. So I'm going to be all right, let's see if they can work through some of these issues. The Fant thing doesn't help. Obviously, they're not going to have Lucas back, even if I don't know if he can come back by week 5. I don't even know if he'll be ready. But maybe here in the next, they can kind of work through it a little bit. And then by week 4, 5, they're okay. And they've gotten better. That's what I'm holding out hope for. Scott Huff's a hell of a coach. Now, again, talent's talent. If these guys aren't talented enough, then nothing he can do. But let's see, and let's just see what adjustments maybe or different schemes that Grubb can come up with. But I did like, and we've talked about this before, I think there's this misnomer a little bit with Ryan Grubb and how he wants to call plays, that this is high-flying offense, and it's deep shots after deep shots, Michael Penix, Roma Dunes, and all those guys. I'm telling you, at the heart of this guy is a coordinator, and he's actually a coordinator that Pete Carroll would love because he wants to run the football. And he wants to be physical, and I think that came through in the second half with Walker.
It did. I think they also they had some success running up the middle. They also had a lot of success getting away from the offensive line, if we're really honest. Ken Walker getting to the perimeter, getting outside. And Ken Walker is such a talented player that, he can do those kind of things. He's very quick, very agile. His ability to dodge tackles, to dodge players as he gets to the perimeter is exceptional. He should have had 2 touchdowns. DK Metcalf, for goodness sake, just let go of Patrick Surtain, and that's 2 touchdowns for Ken Walker. And one of my fantasy teams would have really appreciated that, DK. So you always won. And then you kind of look at the line and you think, I don't know. Like, I don't want to be negative. Like, the last thing I wanted to do is be accused of being massively negative after a week 1 win. But I also, I don't want to. The aim of the season, Puck, was not to just beat the Denver Broncos in week 1. It was to have a good season. And the offensive line really struggled there. And yes, well done to everybody for getting some rhythm going in that second half. But they've got to be better. And I just want to see the Seahawks be competitive. And that's the thing. Like, I can take losing in Detroit the way that the Rams did. I can take losing to Miami even. Those games, but I want us to be in the game. Like, I don't want it to be embarrassing. And at halftime yesterday, it was like, they cannot lose to Bo Nix and the Broncos. They just can't.
Yeah, of course. And there was but I guess the flip side of it was they didn't. And you got to give a lot of credit. Again, I know they were starting a rookie, and I know that Sean Payton, there was probably some plays he'd wanted to dip into that he didn't dip into, just because this Bo Nix is making his debut. You don't want to put too much on his plate. It's a hostile environment. It was juiced up. They were loud. But they did. I mean, look at that. They gave up a touchdown. I mean, I don't care who's starting, but the field position that team was in the majority of the game. What was there? Was it the first half or overall? The average starting position was like the 45-yard line. It was ridiculous. So I kudos to those guys. I mean, we focused a lot on the offense, you and I, at times, when we would talk about, like, what are you excited for? It's the guy that they hired, the defense. There was a lot to be encouraged about. Guys were flying around, making plays. That's the best tackling game I have seen a Seahawks team in years, Rob. Absolutely years. And you know what they did? Something that you wanted to see. What was it? Turnovers.
Yes.
And they forced 3 of them.
I was great confirmation that turnovers, open field tackling, and handling a screen pass is actually not banned. Because I was starting to wonder whether they'd been made illegal, and I just missed the press release on that.
Yeah, you're going to get the note on it.
But apparently not. You can still do those things, and the Seahawks did them plenty last night. I was listening to a Broncos stream this morning just to get a feel for what they were saying, and they commented that it reminded them of Super Bowl 48. That just as soon as the ball went beyond the line of scrimmage, there was a Seahawks defender on the ball carrier immediately. That it was just a boa constrictor just wrapping itself around Denver. That there were no cheap. Every yard had to be hard earned, and it's all you can expect really for a defense is just to do the fundamentals right, to make a team beat you with good plays and exceptional quality. And the Broncos do not have great weapons. They don't have a great receiver. They don't have a great running back. They have a rookie quarterback. Therefore, you should be able to do the things, the fundamentals well. And I don't think a Pete Carroll defense would have done, frankly. And this defense did. So I think that is a big positive. There's a lot to build on there. Yeah. I think whether it was Devin Witherspoon or somebody else, I can't quite remember, who said after the game that they barely even, got the trousers off in terms of showing what Mike McDonald can do with this defense, which is also a good thing, that they've got a lot up the sleeve. Yeah. And to put that performance without really having to move beyond zone defense and the occasional blitz was very encouraging.
You know what I liked? I just liked that there were times that we didn't get to see in the preseason because they're not going to show it during the preseason. But guys lined up on one side and then fake blitzing, and then other guys come. I'm watching it and I'm like, I don't know where it's coming from. Like, you just don't know the way they're designing it and the way they would send Witherspoon off the edge. Rayshon Jenkins, I mean, it didn't really see much. I didn't really watch a lot of preseason game. That guy was everywhere. Like, he just was. You turn around and another tackle by Jenkins. It's like you ever seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High?
I haven't.
Damn it. Well, you got to go watch it. You'll love it. There's this guy in there, character. It's about a high school, and Forrest Whitaker's the star football player, and he just makes tackles everywhere. He's like, another tackle by Jefferson with another tackle. That was like Jenkins. Like every time I was watching the games, like Jenkins making another tackle. But I mean, it just seemed this orchestrated chaos, I thought, defensively, which we don't see a lot of. You see that from the offense, but you don't see that a lot from the defense. And that was awesome. It was fun to watch.
I thought Julian Love just like a different player as well. Like, it didn't look like Julian Love. Like he felt faster. He was all over the place. Well, Jenkins and Love were superb. And there was one play where they made a first down, Denver, but I can't remember who made the hit, but someone might have been Jenkins, came in and absolutely hammered the ball carrier. And I thought, do you know what? It's almost worth letting them have the first down to deliver such a crunching hit. And that was the kind of thing that Cam and Earl would do. Okay, you've got to play, but we're going to leave a mark there. And like it just sets the impression to the offense that, you're going to leave this game battered and bruised. And that puts a thought in the head of the receivers and the tight ends. So it was good to see a bit of that back. They clearly do not have like the superstar talent yet that the Legion of Boom had. Hopefully they can develop a few players to become really good players. But it's really, really encouraging. And look, they're going to have opportunities over the next few weeks against the teams they're playing to make a one game start into a good first month.
I hate to do this, and you know what? It's terrible, but I'm going to tell you right now. I mean that Witherspoon and Woolen, they got a real good chance. I mean, Witherspoon is, dynamic, and there's going to be a lot of comps with him and Sherman and all that kind of stuff. And then if you say like, well, what's the counter? What's the comp to Woolen, right? You go back in the day, and that's like Browner. I'm not saying from a physical standpoint. I'm just saying the other guy on the other side of the field. I mean, I think Woolen's got a chance to be better than Brandon Browner. A lot.
Tariq Woolen has got the potential to be the best cornerback in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean they've got two guys there that are just so. You don't want to get ahead of ourselves here with what was a great secondary, but man, those two are just unbelievable. Yeah, to your point, he does. I mean, Woolen hasn't even scratched the surface yet.
He absolutely hasn't. Look, you do not have players who run as fast as he does with his size, his length. Even when he was having a bit of a sophomore slump, he was regularly in good coverage areas to make a play. It's just that for whatever reason, he took his eye off the ball last year. But now that he seems to have regained that focus, and I thought the big difference between last season and this game was you could just tell. I don't know, I can't explain it, but he just looked super focused, really on it. And I just get this feeling that with McDonald coming in and this staff from the defensive back coach has stayed, he's the only staff member they retained from the Carroll group, that he has got this opportunity. And physically, there is nobody who matches him in the NFL at his position. So there's nothing to stop him reaching the highest level at his position. He could be the best cornerback in the NFL. He's got a ways to go in terms of development and sort of refining his technique and maxing out his physical potential. But it is not an exaggeration. It's not hyperbole to say that he could be one of or the best cornerback in the NFL, because he has everything to make that happen. And hopefully this staff will help him get that.
Yeah, it's I think defensively they just making moves. It was impressive to watch them defensively. What did you one thing we talked about the defense and the secondary and just all the players that were making plays. You didn't hear Byron Murphy's name called a lot. Again, it's just one game, and who knows what Denver was doing, schematically to try and contain him. But again, you just didn't hear him a lot. And what did you take away from the game one there from the rookie?
Well, before we jumped on, I had a look at every one of his snaps. So, and what I saw was they did sort of shift their protection towards him. The guard and the center seemed to be well schooled on being very aware of where he was. They would pass, each other off to Byron Murphy, which made it difficult for him. He very rarely was just going 1v1, rip swim, get into the backfield. But what I would say about Byron Murphy is he's got to find a way to still blast through gaps when he's not being given one-on-one blocking opportunities. He's got to be able to find a way to shoot. He's got to find a way to break into the backfield. And if he isn't going to do it, look, it's his first NFL game. He's got to come up with a really violent bull rush to work at this level, because the blockers are going to be harder than they were in college. Now, the thing at Texas was he would do freaky things. Like he would control blockers on one knee and then get back on his feet all in one movement and not lose any balance or a step. And he'd be the one getting leverage and driving people off the line. He could push the pocket. He could be electrifying and get into the backfield. But the one thing he didn't do was get cheap pressures. Like he wasn't a rip swim specialist. Get into the backfield. Okay, there's a pressure. You could watch Kalijah Kancey, the Buccaneers drafted in the first round a couple of years ago, and that's what it was. It was like pressure after pressure after. You could watch a game and he'd be constantly in the backfield disrupting, and that was never Byron Murphy's game. And for him to reach his potential and become like a top defensive tackle as opposed to a very, very good one, he will want to try and refine that technique a little bit and find a way to use his athleticism, because he's got the quickness, he's got the agility. We've seen the testing. Like, we know that he's got all of the tools that you need to be exceptional as a pass rusher, but it's about putting it all together. I think sort of week one will have been a lesson for him, and the Patriots O-line, isn't the best. So let's see how he gets on next week.
Yeah, I mean, a good thing about, defensively here for these guys, and you start looking at their schedule. I mean, the first 2 weeks, I mean, they're not getting tested really. You know what I mean? Bo Nix in week one, week two, you get Jacoby Brissett. I don't think Jacoby Brissett's going to scare anyone. What they're going to do offensively. And I know they had the big win on the road, but again, I think what they can do defensively against him should give them advantage when they take on the Patriots next week. So I guess for a team, it just feels like the first 2 weeks have been a soft landing, and then of course the schedule will turn from there.
Yeah, there's one other thing I feel like mentioning. I didn't really talk about this after the game, so worth bringing up now, I think. Yeah. I thought Geno Smith was excellent in the second half, but the start of the game.
Wow. Hold on. But I need a breaking news sounder here.
Go on. Yeah.
Because as everyone knows on the internet, Rob, you hate Geno Smith.
Well, that's true. But the thing is, Puck, is I must admit, the game started and I immediately thought of you, because the reporter, who was the sideline reporter, started her broadcast. This was, I think, right before the first snap, saying, Geno Smith says he's motivated by the Seahawks not giving him a new contract this year. And I thought, the only reason anybody is talking about this is because of Jason Puckett.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right.
And Mike Garofalo. Okay, this is it. Because this story, through your interview, I feel as almost like Geno Smith has seen a football on the field, has picked it up and has started running with it, because there's absolutely no reason for him to think that there'd be any expectation he was going to get a new contract, because the Seahawks as a policy do not negotiate with players 2 years out. That's just the history. I don't see any reason why Geno Smith would be different to Marshawn Lynch or Cam Chancellor or Richard Sherman or Russell Wilson or anybody like that. And then the other thing was that it worried me a little bit, because then when you see the interception on the second play, and okay, he's got someone a little bit of pressure there. I get that, but a terrible play. And I messaged Curtis Allen, who writes for me, and we were like, "Did you hear that?" And he was like, "Yeah." And we talked a little bit about it privately. Was that, is Geno now thinking, I need to put stats up to try and win the best contract I possibly can? And I think what we saw in the second half was when Geno Smith plays within the structure of the offense, which may be run-based with Geno playing off that, this can look really good. Geno Smith chasing X number of touchdowns, X number of yards, either to hit his escalators or to try and max out his negotiating ability in the offseason, I don't think is going to work. So I know it's a very small sample size, because the O-line made it impossible to judge Geno Smith after that sort of first series, which I do think the inception was on him. But I do just wonder a little bit whether in his mind right now it's contract, money. And what I'd really like to see is like Gino play within the offensive structure, because I think he is, as we saw in that second half, he can be really, really good playing within that structure, playing play action off the run.
I mean, I think there's a little to that, and I would bring it back around to something that Curtis Crabtree said on the Monday edition of Hawks Nest with him and Tim Booth, or I think actually it was Tim that said this. I think there was part of Ryan Grubb, in that first half of, I got all these shiny new toys, this shiny new offense. So much, there's a little bit of, well, not a little bit, everyone's got a big ego when you're in that league, a little bit of ego of what I did at Washington. Right. And I think I want to show a bunch of different stuff. And I just think it got like, okay, wait a minute. Like, we don't need to show all of it. We don't need to get too complicated. Let's simplify things in the second half. And I think that, to your point, I agree. Is the same thing with Gino. It's human nature, Rob. It just is. Even though he's not in a quote prove it year for a contract, he is in a prove it year for a contract. And I do think that's in the back of his head. We talked, I think, last week's show about his propensity to be on social media and how that's just can be a real detriment, I think, to him and to a lot of players. So I think he hears and sees a lot of things. And, he views himself as a top 5 quarterback in the league. And I think part of that, he wants to go out and prove that. So, yeah, that could be a problem, because you don't want him to push things too much to where it jeopardizes or hampers the team.
And he's rubbing his hands. Look at he's thinking, Kirk Cousins and Tua and Love and all these players.
Sure.
Like Goff, like they're all earning this. I could be earning that. And, the other thing I would say to that point, which I thought was quite interesting over the weekend, was, all of those quarterbacks, well, not all of them, but a lot of them didn't play very well. Like, right. I don't think Tua played like a $50+ million quarterback of the weekend. No. I don't think Jared Goff did. A lot of these, like, you sort of look at it and you think, okay, you've all got these massive contracts now. Good for you. You've done what you need to do. How is this going to help the team? Like, you're taking up now so much of the cap space on the team that you personally will benefit from this, but what's the team going to be like? And then when you sort of think about it, like Patrick Mahomes, who's now something like the 13th the highest paid player based on average per year, which is crazy. Like, he can elevate a team beyond all, whatever's thrown at him, he'll make it work because he's the best.
Right.
And can justify whatever, you could give him whatever you wanted in terms of salary, and you would probably go, yeah, fair enough. But when the Goffs of the world and the Tuas of this world start earning that much, it can become a problem. And I just think there's two things for the Seahawks to remember off the back of this weekend. One of those is paying a quarterback who isn't elite, and there's very few of those actually elite quarterbacks, 3 or 4. Not, paying them elite money, it cannot be a good idea. And the other thing is reaching to draft quarterbacks because you need one, and they've put up a lot of stats in a stat-friendly offense, aka the Oregon Ducks, who are currently playing like crap against Idaho and Boise State, but the quarterback still got 600+ yards and 5 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Getting tricked by stats in college and then drafting a quarterback in the first round and then starting in week 1 and expecting that they're going to be 40% of what Drew Brees was for you is not a good idea. So there's a couple of lessons there, I think.
Yeah. So at any point, I put a little note out on X yesterday. But I think it was after the first safety, maybe the second safety. Just that my favorite GIF of all time of Pete Carroll with the top hat on and chewing his gum and walking up the sideline. She said, "Hey, does anybody miss me? Did you find yourself at all missing Pete Carroll on Sunday?"
Well, I saw the GIF that you posted. I must admit there was. I don't know if it was exactly when when you posted that or when I just saw Mike McDonald on the sideline, and it did make me think, oh my God, the last 14 years have just disappeared. Like, I can remember watching Pete Carroll's first game against the Niners. The weather was like the same as it was on Sunday, and they had a win against the Niners. I can remember thinking excited, like, how is this all going to play out? The Carroll era, and watching it all emerge, and then here we are, and the guy's well into his 70s. He may well be retired. And life's flashing past, our eyes at the minute. I don't miss Pete Carroll. I think it was very much time to move on. I dread to think what would have happened in that second half, because I don't recall major second half improvements under Carroll pretty much at any point, really, apart from when they just played like the Buccaneers, who were winless in Seattle in 2013, and they just basically played how they should have done from the start. So I don't miss Pete, but I do love that gif, and I also love that I knew a couple of Niners fans during that period, and every time the Seahawks had a significant win against the Niners, that gif went down a treat.
Yeah, it's an all-time favorite. It's great. All right, that's it for this week's Rob Staton Show broadcasting, or brought to you by, I should say, Superior Linen Service. See that little QR code if you're watching. If you're watching the live show, or you're watching the replay on YouTube, if you just put your phone up to that QR code, that's going to take you to Superior Linen Service. It's going to take you to suplinen.com. Right there. We made it so easy for you. Committed to delivering the highest quality products and service in the greater Puget Sound area. Get your free quote today at suplinen.com, or just snap that QR code, 253-383-2636. Again, 253-383-2636. All right, Rob, we'll talk to you next week. We'll see what they can do there against the Patriots. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, man.
There he is, Rob Staton. Check all of his work, SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Also, follow him on Twitter, Rob Staton. Check out all of his work. Does the post-game shows, terrific breakdown on YouTube. Just search Rob Staton Football. And appreciate Rob for joining us there on the show. The little taped version that we had earlier today is we'll transition and do a little college football here in a quick second. As Johnny Cans, I know, is waiting eagerly to come on the radio show. I did it again. I did the radio show. I knew that I was going to do. That's 2 days in a row that I've done that. 2 days in a row. That son of a gun. And I wish I could stop doing that. You know what? It's a bad habit. And we bring him on. It's the first edition. It's a live edition here with Johnny Canzano. Johnny Cans, how are you, sir?
I'm good, man. I'm excited. Nothing like live, right? There's nothing like live.
That's what because Jim asked me that question. He's like, why do you want to do it live? Like, and I just said, because, and you know what this is like. And he's like, I never thought of it like that, but okay. See, I always think it's like live performance theater.
Yeah.
Like, I need that little bit of live juice every day. And I miss that a little bit.
Look, you don't get do-overs and retakes in real life,
Right.
This is real life. I love it. Let's do this, man.
All right, let's break it down. John joins us every single week. It's brought to you by Zeke's Pizza, best selection of pizza and local Northwest craft beers. Visit Zeke'sPizza.com. In fact, you can put your camera phone up to that QR code. That is going to take you right to Zeke's Pizza. Also, read all of John's work up there at johncanzano.com. Listen to his radio show, The Bald-Faced Truth, in Portland on 750 The Game. You want to start first with the 25 schedule, or you want to start first kind of your overall evaluation first 2 weeks of the Northwest schools?
Let's talk about the first 2 weeks, because it's not just the Northwest schools. I mean, if we look back at the schools that were previously in the Pac-12, those 12 members from a year ago are now 21-2, Puck. The football product was never the problem here. It was bumbling presidents and commissioners who overplayed their hand. And so, the Northwest schools all being undefeated, all looking good at times, bad at times. I find it interesting, too, that we kind of judge Oregon State and Washington State and Washington by different standards. There's a lot of that going on, particularly in the state of Oregon, as Oregon just hasn't looked great, hasn't looked like the number 3 team or the number 5 team, or even the number 7 team. I keep joking around, like Oregon's like 3 wins away from being out of the top 25. Like they just keep dropping and winning games, but not looking great. But I'll point to last season in Washington. Washington played like 6 or 8 games where they were clunky. They didn't look great. They found a way to win. I'm kind of wondering in this CFP expansion era if Oregon is built to kind of look like an NFL team. Remember, the Chiefs lost 6 times last year and had a real bad run in the middle of the season, but won the damn thing. So let's keep an eye on Oregon. I'm giving them a wide berth, but they haven't looked great, and it's created a lot of intrigue with this Civil War game because Oregon State has stuck to their identity, found their identity, whatever you want to call it. They are running the football. They are playing defense. They go on the road to San Diego State, shut out the Aztecs, and have suddenly made this Civil War matchup standing room only and very interesting for Beaver fans. Conversely, I think Washington State's got maybe the best body of work. You look at the win over Texas Tech, dominant performance against a Big Sky team that just was not competitive. I think Washington State's got a lot to feel good about. I was really surprised to see that spread open at 8.5 points. It's been bet down to 4.5, I think justifiably so. But, Washington State, Washington, Apple Cup. I'm just kind of looking, Puck, at Washington and Oregon and trying to find out, do the kids who play for those schools, a lot of them new, do they understand this rivalry? Do they understand what happened a year ago? Because Oregon State and Washington State do, and I'm curious to see how that plays out on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I think Fish did a good job yesterday, at least talking about it at his press conference. What it means and to have the rivalry so early in the season. And I like what he said. He just said, "Listen, you play games like this, and the practice is just different." We always try to say, right? Pete Carroll was famous for this, and Fish worked with Pete Carroll. Oh, it's championship week. Every week's championship week. It's such a bunch of BS because you treat games differently. And I liked hearing that yesterday from Fish, and I think Dickert even talked about it. It's just different. And it always should be different. It's different how Oregon is preparing differently for Oregon State. And the same, and you can say that for every rivalry that we have in sports, and it's okay to admit it. You asked me on your radio show yesterday, a question about if Wazoo were to lose, what would it do to the fan base? And I thought about that a lot. I thought about that too much yesterday. So I don't like you planting that in my head.
Like Hannibal Lecter, man.
Yeah,
I
don't.
That.
But then it got me thinking, who needs it more this weekend? Who needs it more?
Ooh.
Beaver fans or Cougar fans? The win.
That's good. I think it would say if either one of those schools wins, it's going to say a lot for the Pac-12 and the Pac-12's mission and the message that Jake Dickert has been preaching since last year. We belong, we belong, we belong. So either one wins, you get the we belong message. But I think, wouldn't it be a bigger win for Oregon State to knock off the higher ranked Oregon team? That said, I think the Pac-12 would take them both and take either. And I think, these games, we always say rivalry games, you throw out the records. Well, it's so early. I don't even know who these teams are yet at this point. So I don't know if we're throwing records out, but I think it's very interesting. I have a hard time believing, though, that, Oregon's got 13 transfers that could start among the top 22 on their depth chart. Do those kids understand what happened here? And we'll find out. But, I think it's going to be great. They're standing room only tickets at Reser Stadium. They're being sold, so they're sold out. Ann McCoy, the AD at Washington State, told me that the ticket sales are about 38,000. They're still soft for the Apple Cup, but I think a lot of that was the pricing. But for Washington State fans, this is it. People are watching. You have to show up for your team. You have to understand that these games are important to Washington State and Oregon State. I know Oregon wants to play this game as well, wants to continue the series. Washington wants to continue the series, in part because they get to, in Oregon's case, they get on a bus to go play a road game, and they could not leave the state of Oregon playing their non-conference schedule for the foreseeable future. So, and Oregon State gets a big home game on their season ticket schedule, and we'll get to 25, and I think it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, it's, we talked about this a little bit, you and I. It feels like, and I told you, it feels like that there's more apathy with the Wazoo fan base. And now Wazoo fans maybe will come after me and say, you're crazy. It's just my perception. And maybe it's unfair. I went to the first game, the Portland State game, Labor Day. It wasn't well attended. I get all the excuses. There is always an excuse sometimes with us. It's Labor Day. The opponent's not good. It was too hot. And I love our fan base to death. So Cougar fans, do not take this the wrong way. But there just always seems to be an excuse sometimes for us why we can't go there, why we can't show up. San Jose State in a couple of weeks. So it's on Friday. I'm not going. Well, okay. I mean, but there is always something. And so I wonder, you don't get a sense from Beaver fans of any apathy, do you?
I mean, there's a little bit of anger, and there's some Beaver fans who don't want to play the Civil War, and you have to explain to them, getting a Big Ten team to come to Reser Stadium every other year for the foreseeable future is huge. Not having to get, put an opponent, to pay opponent to come play you, being able to bus 40 miles to play that game, it's huge. Oregon State's AD, Scott Barnes, told me he wants to play every sport, Civil War. Every sport back on, unless there's a good strategic reason not to do it. They want to play those games. They're going to play in baseball. They're going to play in basketball. They're going to play in football. Need to play those games. But there's some Oregon State fans who are saying, hey, I'm so angry still. I don't want to do it. But it's not apathy. I saw, the Oregon State fans showed up at San Diego State. It looked like there were about 3,000 or 4,000 fans there. There were the home game and the opener was a Big Sky opponent, just like Washington State. Very different inside Reser Stadium. A lot of fans, a lot of energy. A bit of a catharsis for the fan base. I heard fans kind of talk about, oh, it's nice just to see football again. Stop talking about all the nonsense. So Washington State, look, I get it. It's Portland State. It was a hot day. But you've got to tune in. You've got to show up for your team because they are currently about to complete their 2025 schedule. They're going to go to market with that and try to negotiate with the CW, try to negotiate with other partners. And attendance, viewership, those things matter. We found out in the last time of realignment. So if you're upset, you could be hurting, and apathetic, you could be hurting your team.
All right, let's get to that 25 schedule. You have it up at johncanzano.com. I would encourage people to go there, read it. Please subscribe, do a gift, do a donate there to John's website at johncanzano.com. What's the latest? It's not all finalized yet, but what do you know of who the Beavers are going to face in 25 and who the Cougars are going to face in 25 as of now?
Well, they each have 6 games already on the schedule. And in, Oregon State's case, it includes, obviously they play each other. Washington State and Oregon State will play each other. It includes a Civil War game. They've got a game with Texas Tech. They've got a game with Houston. They got the schedule starting to come together. So 6 games there. Washington State also has the 6 games that everybody knows that were pre-booked on their schedule. A couple things that have come up. The Mountain West Conference, who they fell apart on an extension of the deal that was going to extend that partnership, that scheduling partnership. The Mountain West, and Pac-12 far apart. There seems to be a little bit of coldness forming, a cold front forming between these two entities. And some of it obviously is related to the fact that the Mountain West is playing some defense here. But I've been told that the Pac-12 is trying to finalize the 25 schedule. They're working with Dave Brown, who is the scheduling guru, who does all of this stuff. He's a savant. He is putting together the schedules. They're piecing them together. They were trying to get some Mountain West opponents here or there, cherry pick maybe the best matchups they could get. And the Mountain West Conference is blocking that and saying you cannot schedule any games beyond the first 3 weeks of the season. And the Pac-12 schools are saying, look, this is obviously an intentional move to make life difficult for us. Gloria Navarez, the Mountain West commissioner, told me, hey, this is just per our policy. This is how we operate. But I'm getting some eye rolling from Washington State and Oregon State, who are trying to put the finishing touches on the schedule. Puck, I'm told it's not going to look like a straight alliance or partnership with another conference. It won't just be, hey, the ACC is going to play 6 games against the Pac-12 schools, or the Big 12 is going to play 6 games. It's not going to look like that. It's going to be piecemealed together by Dave Brown. I expect something here in the next couple weeks. I'm told they are putting the final touches on this. They have the matchups, the handshakes. Contracts are not signed. Of course, things can happen. Of course, somebody could come in from left field. Oregon State, I'm told, has a little ACC flavor on their schedule. They're already playing Cal. Washington State's already playing Virginia. But you look at the ACC teams, there are a bunch of ACC teams who have some open dates, including Stanford, that's got 2 open dates. Keep an eye on them. Miami's got an open date. Notre Dame, which is, kind of a ACC member, but not, has got an open date as well. But I'm being told that the schedule in 2025 will be better than the schedule in 24 as it pertains to Power 4 level opponents. They will then finalize that, and then they'll go to market, as I said. And the CW is the natural partner here. The CW's got this appetite to expand, have more inventory. If these games are more attractive than the stuff the CW is carrying this season, the low-level ACC games and these Pac-12 Mountain West games in a lot of cases, I expect the CW to be at the table and put a bib on, right, and be interested in this. There could also be some other partners. I find that interesting. And then the Pac-12 has hired Navigate, this Chicago-based firm that has worked behind the scenes throughout realignment, worked with Oregon, worked with Gonzaga, worked with some conferences. Really smart firm, data-driven. They're moving into the media space. it feels to me like they're getting their valuation on what their 2025 season and what these two schools are worth in a potential move to another conference someday. They're probably getting some direction from Navigate. I think it's a smart move.
But you don't see anything, any relationship, in 25 with another conference.
I don't see at this point, no. And I asked that specific question of a couple sources who were involved, and they said it's not tracking that way. They've had those discussions. Teresa Gold, the Pac-12 commissioner, obviously would have talked to the Big 12, would have talked to the ACC, said, hey, is there something here that we can do that would bridge us to a full alliance or a full partnership for the 25 season? I'm told that's not where it's headed right now. And, and also, look, the schools want to be done with this, the scheduling part of this, sooner rather than later. They want to be able to say to fans, hey, this is what we're playing in 25. We're not going to leave this hanging over the heads of potential kids that are players who might get into the portal. They want to, I think, to put this to rest in the first half of this college football season, and then get about finding out, like, what is the value? What will the CW pay for these games? And certainly I think, everybody, not just in the Pac-12 footprint and in the state of Oregon and Washington, I think people outside those footprints are looking with curiosity to see what happens.
We touched on a little bit earlier, and you talked about Oregon's schedule and, what's happened here in, the first 2 weeks. They didn't look good against Idaho, and, Idaho's, probably a better football team. They realize Boise State's can be real good. I mean, they've got perhaps maybe the best running back in the country. Statistically he is, and they continue to win. He's going to be in the conversation for the Heisman Trophy. I just, can he coach? We've talked about this before, and I don't know, man. Can he recruit? I guess he can. I mean, they have a great class. They've got great people that work on that staff that can recruit. Tosh Lapoise is defensive coordinator, but at the root of it, when the game is on the line, can that guy actually coach, John?
Yeah, I think it's a philosophical question. You have to ask yourself, what is coaching in this era? I think we look at basketball. Look, I covered Indiana basketball, and Bobby Knight was a tremendous teacher. He wasn't the best recruiter. He was a great teacher. He could develop. Guys wanted to play for him. I also covered Tark. Tark wasn't as great with the teaching part, but man, could he recruit. And what Tark did is he had great assistants on his staff. He had Tim Gergerich on his staff. He had John Welsh on his staff. He went out and got guys that could get into the gym and work with players and develop them. So the question for Dan Lanning isn't, can he coach, although that's the big umbrella question. He's a fantastic recruiter. He's recruited on a level that nobody has seen at Oregon. The question is, does he have the right staff around him? And I think we're going to find that out as we watch this talent either develop or hit a low ceiling or struggle to get together. Tosh Lapoy is defensive coordinator. Oregon makes him a D coordinator, gives him $1.7 million when they hire him. He had been a coordinator at Alabama for one season, and he was stripped of the defensive coordinator play calling duties by Nick Saban in the middle of that season. It wasn't like he had this great record of calling games or developing players. Oregon brought Tosh Lapoy into the equation because the guy can flat recruit, and that's part of coaching. But I look at the staff as a whole, Puck, and you've got to have some gray-haired guys on your staff that know how to coach, that know how to develop, that have seen some stuff. And that's where I look at Dan Lanning and I kind of go, okay, we're going to find out. And I like that there's some adversity early, because it looks like Idaho outcoached them, although Oregon may have just shown up and said, we're going to go vanilla today. I talked to Jason Eck, the Idaho coach, and he said, they didn't show anything on offense we hadn't seen. So no wrinkles. They just played it kind of straight and thought they're probably going to win the game. Boise State, Oregon played maybe one really good quarter. The rest of it was really clunky, disjointed, offensive line problems. Seemed to have figured something out in the second half. We'll see this week against Oregon State. But if they don't fix this, the narrative for the season is going to be, man, they had a $200,000 Bentley, and they're struggling to drive this thing. And so I think a lot of eyes, a lot of pressure on Dan Lanning. I also think the guy welcomes it. It's kind of his thing. He's not going to run from this. So I'm interested to see how Oregon plays and if Oregon can pull itself together. Another thing you and I have talked about is kind of just this transfer portal era. Are we watching some teams in the early part of the season that are transfer heavy, that are just struggling to gel, struggling to find chemistry, culture? Dylan Gabriel's not Bo Nix. He's maybe that was unfair for fans and media to kind of say, okay, the guy's going to be Bo Nix. But there's some stuff going on with more than just Oregon, with transfers and teams trying to find rhythm.
Yeah, it's it's interesting to kind of watch them and just watch them, kind of move as a staff together and to see what they can do in this new conference. I don't know. They're just something when I watch him coach and that I'm just not convinced that he's actually the guy, that he can actually, get those big wins, and we'll find out. I mean, maybe he does, maybe gets over the hump.
But that's the job. I mean, that's 100% the job. You take that Oregon job, 10 wins in season 1, people are disappointed.
Of course.
And then they beat Liberty. Not their fault that they got Liberty last year. They had a better year. So I like the trajectory, but, you look at the losses. There's 3 losses to Kalen DeBoer, a loss to Jonathan Smith, a loss to Kirby Smart. It's not like Gary Anderson's out scheming them here, but let's see what happens in the next couple of weeks. I think Oregon's just trying to find some rhythm right now.
What do you think about Jedd Fisch so far in the first 2 weeks? They've got off to these slow starts, but at the end of the day, they find themselves with blowout wins. If you didn't watch the game, you come back and just look at the box score and see the final, you go, oh, it's a dominant win for Washington. What's the takeaway in the first 2 weeks of watching him navigate, his new team in his new city?
I need a bigger sample size like everybody else, but there's a calmness that he's brought that I like. And it's a poise. There's a calm. It just, I'm watching him even when they're not playing well at times. And I'm thinking, he doesn't seem too worried. He looks like a guy who's in this for like it's a marathon. And, he's looking at his splits in the second mile going, okay, I need to pick up here or pace myself there. But, big test Saturday. I think Washington State's going to bring a punch. And let's see how Washington takes it.
What do you think of Mateer? It's so funny to watch. It's so funny that, I have been ball washing this guy for 2 years, John Mateer. and then when I remember the first series against Portland State, and he looked terrible. I'm like, oh my God, this is not
You're
good.
Idiot.
I'm an idiot.
Bad take.
Last week, we just, that school has never seen a quarterback like that. I've made this comp and I've said this several times now on a bunch of different shows that he reminds me so much of Jake Locker. It's probably because he wears number 10 as well. He's a little bit shorter than what Locker was, but the same type of athlete, same arm, everything. It's just, it's odd to watch him. He might be a little bit quicker than Jake, but Locker was sensational. And I just think it gives them a whole new arsenal to throw at Washington, because I think the one thing, and I think Husky fans would admit this in the first 2 weeks, their defense is not what it used to be. They're very good in the secondary, but up front, they're not that good as of yet. They haven't shown that yet, and teams have been able. Weber and Eastern Michigan last week were able to move the ball on them. And when a play breaks down, what do coordinators hate? They hate the running quarterback, and to me, he clearly is the number one and X factor in that game on Saturday.
Yeah, I think Washington State, you have to ask yourself, what are they looking for from that position too? Because if I'm Washington, I look at game 1 and I'm going, this guy can beat you with his arm. And then you look at game 2 and you go, okay, wait a minute, he can beat you with his legs. I think you've seen enough to know that this is a quarterback who's capable of winning games in different ways, right? It's obvious. But, Washington State wants to play defense, Puck. They want to run the football, play defense, and have Mateer come over the top of that and really hurt you when you're concerned about Wayshawn Parker or somebody else breaking off a 50-yard run. I think Washington State's dangerous this week. If Washington does not show up to play, they will get punished.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a fun game. It's gonna be a weird game. It's a weird game because of the timing of it.
Sure.
The fact that it's not at the traditional time slot.
Okay,
and,
but wait,
and all of it.
Instead of being like traditional Washington State fan and spinning that into a negative, think about the blessing of that. If you're a Cougar fan, you don't want to play, brand new coach, brand new regime coming in. There seems to be a little bit of, you saw it in week 1 and 2 at Washington. There's a little bit of figuring out things going on at Washington, like all first-year coaches and new programs do. You want to play Washington in week 3. You don't want to play them in November. They're going to be better in November, albeit they're playing better competition and their schedule gets brutal at the end. But that'll be a better team by the end of the season. If you're Washington State, You got to get off the bus now. You want to play them on Wednesday, play them Thursday. Like the sooner you can play Washington, the more advantageous.
I agree with that. I agree with you 100%. The time from a football standpoint, the X's and O's, the time to play them is right now because of, and Jed Fish in week 8, week 9, or at the end of the season, you're right. It's going to be a much better football team than they are right now.
Yeah. And look, don't get fooled by week 1. Portland State, I talked to Portland State about, how that game got away. And, Portland State subbed out 5 starters on defense in the first half. And I really think some of the Big Sky teams are trying to win. Idaho was trying to beat Oregon. And some of them are trying just to not get hurt for their regular season. They're not saying it. They're taking the paycheck, and they're pulling a bunch of guys out of the game. But I think we got a good taste of what Mateer and Washington State can do. I love the receivers. I like the running backs. And the defense is always going to be good with Jake Dickert. Conversely, Washington's going to walk in there, and they're going to treat it like a rivalry game too. This is fantastic. I'm glad we're getting this instead of, Georgia Southern or some game that doesn't matter.
Give me your picks. You are really, because you really are boasting yourself a lot at JohnCanzano.com. What's your record right now overall and against the spread?
I'm 25-1 picking games straight up right now, and I'm 19-7 against the spread. Now, I haven't fully looked at either of these games, and I tend to not look at them until about Wednesday night, and I make my picks Thursday morning because I want to hear more. I want to know, who's playing, who's not playing. But, I can tell you I started the week, and I saw that 8.5 points sitting out there with Washington State, and I was like, that's easy. I would take Washington State and the points. I would take them right now, take them all day long, because I think that is a really close game, and I think Washington State could win it outright. I think Oregon State's in a different predicament. Oregon State, I've watched 2 of games up close, and they're a team that has to go 5 to 7 yards at a time. They don't have the game-breaking receiver. They don't have backs that are going to run away from linebackers and defensive backs. So Oregon State has got to keep that game in the 20s to have a shot to win, and they have to keep Oregon from ripping off 59-yard slant passes for touchdowns and punt returns for touchdowns and kickoff returns from touchdowns. And that's what Oregon does, because Oregon's got 5-star guys that can take it to the house anytime they touch it. So, I'm a little more concerned for Oregon State because there are just a couple big plays from not being able to stay with Oregon. But I like both Pac-12 teams in points right now, just given how things have gone. And Oregon State is now getting 18.5 at home against Oregon. And Oregon has not looked great. I mean, I think right now I'm leaning towards taking points in both Washington State and Oregon State, but I'll give my official picks Thursday. That's where I stand today.
Okay. Is a last thing for you. I know you've seen the Shedeur Sanders post game where he throws this offensive line under the bus. Is the shine off them now?
Yeah. I mean, come on. The shine was off the Colorado, act last season down the stretch. It reminds me a little bit of, when you see a good club basketball team or Team USA in Athens, right? I covered Team USA in the Olympics. You look at the talent and you go, okay, there's NFL talent on that team. I like Travis Hunter. I like Shedeur as a passer. But then you start to look at how does it fit together? And the question you raised earlier, can they coach? You saw his coordinators wanted no part of him after last season. They bolted. You're throwing your offensive line under the bus. You can't do that. It feels more and more to me like this, Colorado football is a club football team that, the parent of one of the best players is coaching. And beyond the 2 or 3 players he really cares about, I kind of wonder what happens to them if they lose this week to Colorado State. Do the wheels come off? They're not a bowl team. They can't run the ball. They can't stop the run. And they're, Shedeur Sanders is sitting out there on an island. I feel bad for him in a lot of ways because I think if you put him in a good system with competent coaching around him, I think he would shine. But when you put him in a system where everybody knows they're not running the football and the defensive line can pin their ears back and come after him and the offensive line's not that good, I worry he's not going to finish the season, that there will be an injury to him. And I just don't see it going beyond this year with Colorado. I think if it implodes, you could see Coach Prime go, I can't win here, and take a job somewhere else or follow his kid into the NFL.
There he is, John Canzano. It's all brought to you by Zeke's Pizza, the best selection of pizzas and local Northwest craft beers. Visit Zeke'sPizza.com. Hit that QR code. It's going to take you right there to Zeke's Pizza. Of course, you can follow John on X at John Canzano BFT. Read all of his work at JohnCanzano.com, including the latest on the 2025 schedules for Oregon State and Washington State. And he has got a world-renowned radio show. The PortlandGazette.com called it the second best show in Portland.
Exciting. Thanks, Puck.
You are the best. Thanks for doing it. Hopefully it all went well for you.
Yeah, it did. Thanks, man. I appreciate
all right,
you.
There he is, John Canzano, who, again, joins us every single Tuesday talking college football. And, I think the one thing when it gets back to the Apple Cup, and I think fan apathy, and I know that's going to be a hot button issue this week, is there are I think fans, maybe on both sides. I just think more fans on my side, our side, who is just a little bit more apathetic towards the game. And I get it. And I'm not even judging you about it. I understand. I didn't want the game to be played anymore. Me personally. It's going to be weird. Is it going to be weird and different on Saturday? Of course it is. It doesn't carry the same juice that it did in the past, and that's because you had a whole season leading up to it, and then you had, you're going back and forth, with the fan bases the whole season because you're in the same conference. So that element of it is just completely different. So. All right, we'll get Bill Krueger on here in a quick second as he'll jump back on, and we'll talk a little baseball there with Bill and get his thoughts there on the Mariners. I haven't talked to Bill Krueger since before we left on vacation, and we didn't even get to talk to him. We haven't recapped the whole situation with Scott Service. We haven't even recapped the situation there with Jerry Dipoto. So let's bring Bill Krueger back on. Hi, Bill. How are you? Good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's a little break in the action, but had a little trip out of the country with my family, and but never lost track of our riveting Seattle Mariners ball club.
Bill Krueger joins us every week now, going to be here on Tuesdays with us. It's brought to you by the Rise Above Foundation. You can visit nativeyouthriseabove.org. It's been so long. I was just saying this before you came back on. It has been so long that we haven't even talked about Service. We haven't even talked about Jerry Dipoto. I want to first start with Jerry Dipoto, and then we can move to Scott Service. Were you surprised that they brought him back? And they haven't even announced it yet. But the reporting from Ryan Divish and Adam Jude, surprised that he is coming back for a 10th year.
Well, I the inner workings of the Mariners, Jerry's brought a lot of cred to the table. He's got a lot of power. I think he's advanced from. If you look at the hierarchy, he's the president of baseball operations as opposed to just being the general manager. That's Justin Hollander's role. So I think obviously he's become he's taken a higher seat in the hierarchy, so to speak. You get the impression that he sits closely with ownership, and he's been there a long time. So I think at this point he has brought a lot of credibility to the table, and he's been able to dodge whatever criticism at this point that the club is taking on, that really that falls to the field level and where they felt Scott Service came up short.
But and there's no doubt that he's going to be back for a 10th year, that they're going to give him multiple years. No GM or / president of baseball operations. President of baseball operations is going to come back for just 1 year, right? This is going to be a multi-year deal. In your opinion, looking at it from an ownership standpoint, why do you think they ultimately decided to bring him back and say, you know what, your vision, we're good with it, let's move forward with it?
That's really difficult for me to say. I mean, I think they're just lockstep in how they've tried to tackle this plan. I mean, really, what charted the new course is when John Stanton came on board, and that's when really I think the clock started ticking on this new regime, as opposed to looking at Jerry from the beginning of his tenure. So I think that's probably where you have to start looking a little bit more closely at the number of years that John, being the new leader of the ownership group, and Jerry have started their time together. So I think that's kind of where you start to say this is where things really matter, so to speak, not looking at those years when he first took over, when the cupboard was bare and they were bleeding out, trying to get rid of older contracts and become, a younger organization. And then, I mean, you look at the status of things as they sit presently. They're in a difficult, challenging position to try to make the playoffs, and that's the standard that they've set. I mean, they had a year where they finished just out of the playoffs. Then the next year they made the playoffs, and then last year just one game out of the playoffs. I think that's what they're kind of looking at for the moment, and where they can build from there. They have obviously a young core they have a young core, Jason. We could talk about that and where we think the club stands presently. But Jerry's part of where they think they're going to move forward in a more successful way. I'm not so sure what else to comment on that.
I want. Okay, now we get to the decision there with Scott Service.
Right.
I mean, they didn't have they got. I don't know how much it was the fault there of Scott Service. I mean, I don't know. When we break down his managerial style, I mean, to me, the guy that's the most important about the baseball team is always going to be the president and the GM, and then it goes down to Scott Service. We can discuss. I mean, and I know it's old news, and I know people are probably tired of it. I mean, the handling of it wasn't done right, and that's something they can learn from and get better at. You can't. He can't find out via a text message, or not a text message, an alert on his phone. That just can't happen. Yeah. But was it his fault? Did they need a new voice? And do you see a change in them since Dan Wilson has taken over the team?
Well, I think, Scott, you're just a victim of circumstance. He had a long tenure position, one of the longer managers in baseball. And, they just, when you set the bar where they set it, and they were 10 games up in June, and they've fallen so hard that it just becomes, it becomes you're the guy that's going to be on the chopping block. That's just how it goes. That's just the nature of the beast, okay? So we can argue the merits of Scott's service. I think he's done a very credible job here when you consider what he's been handed. And I think it's just like anything, though. When the club falls so hard, whether you think that the way the club was constituted gave him a real chance to be successful, that maybe he had reached higher than this club could actually go, and that they've come back to the sort of reversion of the mean, because that's just who they are. A club that lacks offensive punch, that maybe perhaps had some holes in the bullpen, which we can discuss. And he's just a victim of circumstance. Now, Dan Wilson, to me, sets up the bar. Granted, he has no experience as a manager. But when you talk about a guy that is, in my opinion, got all the capability of being a great manager and has set the bar so high in regards to the club picking a guy that has such a remarkable, history as a player, and brings all of that back to the table, and hopefully that's something that he can, bring forward to the players, that they now have someone that they could say, wow, this guy has created quite a career and has a real message. And when you bring he and Edgar Martinez to the table, I don't know that you can go any higher in regards to what you can bring to the club. Now, can they flip the team? Can you take an aircraft carrier and spin it on a 180? I don't think you can. That's just not possible. So he's left with what the club has, and we can talk about what he's done. I think what I've seen so far, honestly, he's been more willing to sort of say, look, I think this is what's working for us. Luke really deserves more ABs. We got to get Justin Turner in there every day. Robles has done a great job in the leadoff spot, and if he's not in there, then I'm not going to force J.P. Crawford into the leadoff spot until he gets his game going. And I think he's tried really hard to push starting pitching. because he knows he's lacking in the bullpen. And to whether that's worked to their best advantage, I think, you could say, well, there have been some homers that have been given up late, but I think I think Dan is trying to take best advantage of the personnel that he has right now. His club's got holes.
A lot of players, Bill, have praised, what Edgar Martinez has meant to them. It was, last Friday. I think you've got J.P. Crawford talking about, hey, things were overcomplicated, and he's just simplified things. Edgar had some great comments over the weekend. I know they probably touched near and dear to your heart about how I don't care about exit velocity, I don't care about barrel rate. Like, average to me, and the simpler stats, right? Those mean more to me, just in terms of an indication how somebody is performing. They've all talked about just a simpler approach. I was joking with Jim Duquette about this on yesterday's show, and I look at it all the time when youth coaching, and I think it's the best video in the world for hitters, and it's the Tony Gwynn video, if everyone remembers it, and where he's talking to a bunch, I think it's college kids, about how to hit. And he had two rules. It was be balanced and take the knob to the ball. The knob of the bat to the ball. That was it. That was his whole, he's like, everything else, well, if you do that, the ball's going to go. And I think in this day and age, right, you're a golf fan, there's so much video and information now for golfers and hitters in baseball that I think, and tell me if you agree with this, it can paralyze someone. And maybe that's what was happening, and maybe the greatest teaching tool that Edgar has done is say, we're going to pull back on that.
Well, sure, but players are their own coaches. I mean, coaches are there; they're facilitators. You have to open yourself up, and how do you open yourself up at this place in the season? You're going to take the game that you have to the table. You're going to take your routine to the table and do the best you can. Now, maybe there's less this massive amount of information, that maybe that's being allowed. The Edgar's allowing the players to say, look, this is a better way to think about where you are today, and try to get a good ball to hit and be on balance and have a game plan when you go to the plate. Okay, well, that's great. But, the players are going to be who they are presently, where they are in this season, where they are mechanically, where they are confidence-wise, where they are is just what you're going to see going forward. There's just not enough time to make big changes in someone's approach. I think mentally you can get a refresher from Edgar to say, hey, look, what you just talked about, getting a good ball to hit, being on balance, having a game plan at the plate, maybe building confidence around some things that maybe when you hear it from Edgar and that breeds in you, like, I am a good hitter. And Edgar thinks that this and that and the other thing, and then I can take that to the plate and be successful. Terrific. I mean, it's a case-by-case basis, right? Have we seen a little bit more situational hitting? A little bit more, right, than we have. We've still been stung by the massive strikeouts that have still littered the program. If you look back since Dan arrived, there's still been a 13er, a 14er, a 16er. Those haven't gone away. This club struggles against great pitching, and they've had their way with mediocre pitching, and that's probably true across the board with all clubs. But good clubs find a way to hit good pitching, or good clubs find a way to It's such a difficult situation, because if you hit into the count, then maybe you strike out. So let's swing at the first pitch, and maybe we'll have success. But if we don't have success at swinging at the first pitch, the starter's still out there with 75 pitches in the seventh inning. Is that good? Good clubs wear starting pitching out. Good clubs hit bad pitching, and good clubs take and try to labor the starter into getting him out of the game. That's what good hitting teams do. They foul pitches off. They make the pitcher work. That's what you want. Not just, hey, let's hit the first pitch. Let's not get into the count and see the nasty stuff. Well, there's two edges to that, for sure. I think as I look at this club, it's the field bet, and then you got Julio Rodriguez. If you want to get down to it, where are we? Well, Julio Rodriguez looks like the same player to me. He's gotten a hitting streak going. He still looks like the same guy. Big swing. He's been able to bleed some balls in, but he's still not the guy you need that stirs the drink. And if he's not, that makes it challenging for this club. Justin Turner's a pro hitter, but he's 39 years old. He's a pro hitter, though. You have a pro hitter in Justin Turner, but the rest of the guys is kind of a ham and egg, right? You're hoping for the right matchup. You're hoping that you find some magic. Robles has got to get back in there because he's given them a lot, right? Rosarina and Julio are kind of the same guy. Rosarina's got a little bit better plan, but they are both swing at everything, right? So it's an interesting mix. I'm talking around the situation. We're still challenged offensively, Jason. What can I tell you? And the superstar player is not hitting. He's slugging 370, and he cobbles hits together, but he's not getting it done.
Bill,
okay?
We could just we could rinse and repeat this show for the last 5 years about offensively, about what they need to do. And you're right. I mean, a good portion. I mean, a big, huge reason why they struggled so much this year was because of him, because he didn't deliver. He had a terrible season.
Yeah, he just hasn't been the same guy, and he's going to have to regroup and figure it out. He's going to have to figure out what is it that he's going to have to do. I mean, I am not a hitting guru, but I can tell you this, that anybody that looks at him and stops him at the moment that he starts to go forward and sees that bat head in a forward press position is going to say, hey, he's got a long ways to go to get to the ball. He better have lightning in those hands. Yeah. He better be picking a pitch and then have lightning in his hands because he's got a long ways to go to get to the ball.
Yeah.
So if he's on time and he happens to start his swing early and gets the pitch that he can handle, sure, like anybody. And he's a very talented guy, but it's not enough to be talented. This team, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of personality there. I mean, Luke really gets after it. Rosarina gets after it. Robles is getting after it. Raleigh gets after it. They got some guys that really get after it, right? They're not a great offensive team. But, and I don't want to jump ahead in the conversation, but the big problem we're having is, yes, do we need to score a few more? Yes. But the big problem is we got no left-hander in the bullpen. We got no right-handed bullet in the bullpen to support Munoz, and that is where we're dying on the vine. And we have young pitching that they're actually trying to nudge a little bit forward, but because they've been so trained to leave it, to throw everything into it for 6 innings, they don't really know how to approach the 7th and the 9th. Because it isn't just rip it at the top of the zone and rip breaking balls. They're losing because they're giving up homers late in games because they don't know what they don't know, which is being able to pitch down and away and understanding where weak contact lives. That's where they're having problems.
Do you get a sense? I've talked about this with Divish. It also brought up with Duquette. I want your 2 cents on this as well, because they find themselves in such a difficult position. Bill, year in and year out to bring in free agent talent here for hitters. I mean, it is, you've talked about the ballpark. We had that a month ago about the ballpark issues. The travel issues I think are a big deal. I know they fly charter and all that, but it's still a grind on these guys. And then where the distance is of just, living up here in Seattle, all of that. They're in ownership and money, and there's just a bunch of factors that go into why they have not been able to sign free agents. It's led people to think that they'll trade one of these pitchers. Castillo's got $72 million remaining on his contract. Now, they could move him. I'm not sure what they're going to get in return, because you're asking that team to take on $72 million and then asking them to also give you a top prospect. I don't know how many teams are going to do that. And then it's going to turn to Logan Gilbert. If they turn around and trade Logan Gilbert for a hitter this offseason, now, I mean, as a pitcher, how disappointed would you be in that? Or would you be on board with that?
It's sad because you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And, we could go back in time, and there's trades that haven't worked in their favor, and they haven't been able to capitalize on having basically Yahtzee, which is 5 premium starting pitchers, a center fielder, a shortstop, a catcher, and a premium young closer. That's Yahtzee. All you got to do is sprinkle around the edges and you win, right? That's all you got to do. But you can't sprinkle with like, just arms tied behind the back, clipping coupons, waiting for the blue light special at Kmart. I mean, you just can't do that. You can't quite do that. As much as you might like to do that, you can't quite do that. And we've talked about it. We have a young core of really nice looking position players, a Baltimore Oriole-ish group of guys, but where are they? Low A ball. Mm-hmm. Yes, Colt Eberson is now in high A ball, but the other 4-ish are in low A ball. They're not ready to come to where you want them to be, to play this young team, because you have problems getting free agent hitters to come here. So what's the answer? Develop hitters, right? But they're not there yet, and there's a gap. That's a problem. I think I'd hate to see them steal from their strength if they can help it. They shouldn't. They should not. They should They should work a little harder. Sharpen their pencils a little bit more, take a harder look at the market, and try to find guys that are pro hitters. Find guys that can lash the ball in the alley. Find guys that can run. Find guys that aren't necessarily sluggers. We got some of that. If they sign a Rosarina, he's kind of a slugger. Raleigh's a slugger. Julio in his best days, hopefully can be more than just a slugger. But they got a lot of slugging. So what they need is more guys that I think baseball in general is looking for. Guys that can put it in play, that have a pro approach, that don't strike out a whole lot. Everybody's looking for that now, but they don't seem to ever talk about it, but that's what everybody's looking for when you watch baseball. Can they find those kind of hitters that aren't necessarily guys that are going to hit 40 homers and, be the star, that kind of slugging star? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Can you avoid having to make a trade in order to find that guy? Now, I don't know. You start to, I think when you get behind the scenes, you have to say to yourself too, you're looking at this young pitching, right? You got Gilbert. Castillo's probably not tradable. You probably stick with him.
And he's got a no waive. He has a no trade clause, but these guys can always waive that.
And Brian Wu is still a mystery. Will he be healthy? And so where does that leave you? It leaves you with Gilbert and Kirby, right? Yeah. Now maybe you say to yourself, well, we're just going to have to talk to both of their representatives and see which one's willing to sign an interim deal that eats a couple of the years of their free agency. And if one of them does, then the other one's maybe the guy that's not going to stick around. And maybe then you think about trading a guy like that. I
don't want to trade any of them. I don't want to trade any of them, and because I love Yahtzee, even though I lose at Yahtzee all the time to my kids. I love that damn game more than anything. Okay, because all I ever try to do is go for Yahtzee.
Yes.
Maybe I should not take the twos. Oh, I need four. I need fours. Take fours, but I don't because I just keep going for Yahtzee and then I lose. I want all of them, and that's what drives me crazy about them. About this whole situation is that it's just like the Seahawks with Russell Wilson. They're paying these guys nothing right now. Nothing. And they could just sit there and get all this talent around them, win a World Series, win a championship, and people will love you forever. But now we're talking about trading Logan Gilbert in the offseason to get a bat. And it just
it just everything they do bites them. I mean, Ty France is over there raking in Cincinnati. And why did we get rid of Ty France? Was he the culprit of doom and gloom here? No, they did it because they were thinking 2 deals ahead, trying to figure out how they could cobble together $1 million to help them so they don't have to stroke a check, right? Yeah, because their first base play has not been good. Really just plays hard.
Yeah.
And Turner's kind of lost over there. And then when we had Lockhart over there, he was terrible. So, Ty France can play first. Yeah, he wasn't hitting like he could hit, but he's a pro first baseman. Wouldn't you want to keep him? And if you decide to get rid of him for something, right? Yeah. If they would have done themselves a favor and just tried to play to their strength a little bit, maybe Jimmy Garcia could have been great and he got hurt, and that's too bad. Mm-hmm. But they did not have any left-handed pitching. That has cost them at least 5 games, Jason. Mm-hmm. No left-handed bullet. There were guys out there. Tanner Scott, and A.J. Puck.
Sure.
I'm just naming a couple. You should have you should have said to yourself, we are lacking offensively. We're going to have to just kind of hope that this, a couple of these guys catch fire, and we'll just win those close games. And we'll ask our starters to get another out or two. But we're so right-handed. And when we see left-handed hitting, and it's a problem. It's a problem. We don't have a left-handed starter. We had 2, now we have 0. And we didn't have any left-handed relief. If we had left-handed relief, it changes everything. We win 4 or 5 games. Instead of woeing and crying about not being a great offensive team, the problem was left-handed relief and another bullet in the bullpen.
Yeah, play to your
they
strengths.
could have gotten. That they could have gotten without having to mortgage the future, without having to. And one of the problems is when you bring guys in and you bring a lot of guys in that are all kind of the same, that destroys chemistry. Yeah. You need to have someone that's better than everybody else that you bring in. Otherwise, guys are sort of like, well, I'm not playing. And what about this matchup? And why isn't me today? And why is it them? And blah, 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 right? I'm sure that's been there a little bit. This team has pretty good chemistry, but I'm sure sometimes the guys are scratching their heads a little bit, I'm sure. But yeah, they could, you get yourself a couple left-handed pitchers.
That's why.
You win some games.
Yeah. That's why you're the best. That's why we love having you on. Okay, we do it. Thank you for moving around to a new time. We'll do it for the rest of the baseball season. You're even better on the live version than you were in the recorded version, and it's amazing. And you know what? There are Mariner fans that are watching this, listening to this live. They're going back. They're watching it later this evening, and they're saying to themselves, "This is the Bill Krueger I love, and this is the Bill Krueger we deserve." And it's all brought to you by Rise Above Foundation. All right, we'll cut you loose. Go get back there to your regular job, and we appreciate the visit.
I enjoyed it, Jason. Glad we could do this live. Exciting.
Yeah, there he is, Bill Krueger, who will join us every single Tuesday talking Mariners baseball. Huh? How about that Bill Krueger unplugged? He'll let it go. You know, here's the thing about Krueger. Here's the thing about Bill Krueger. You just love the fact that he will give you an opinion. All right, he is not going to shy away from his opinion on the Seattle Mariners. All right, we've gone a little long. Like I've said here on this show, this new venture here as we go live, we're going to try to be done by 11:30. The odds that we're going to always be done by 11:30, slim to none. All right. It can't happen. And now I'm going to play something that's going to be like another 2 minutes. We wrap up every single show with Hey, What the Puck. It's brought to you by Restoration One of North Seattle. It's your restoration company that lets you avoid the stress of water, fire, and mold damage with their property restoration services. Locally owned and operated. Make them your first call when damages affect your residential or commercial property. 206-817-8917. Visit them online at restoration1.com, the North Seattle franchise. If you're watching right now, on the live version or recorded version later, that little QR code, if you take your iPhone, go to that QR code, that's going to take you right to the restoration1.com website. Hey, what the puck? Man, did we lose one? Did we lose one yesterday? James Earl Jones. You want to talk about a great American actor? I mean, the list of movies is too long. I mean, he's the voice of a generation of people my age, the voice of Darth Vader. And, you know, he might be first of all, he's the single greatest, like, voiceover ever for a movie character. There's no doubt about that. He might be the best character of all time. He certainly is the best villain of all time. He was instrumental in so many baseball movies, Sandlot, which my kids adore. One of my favorite, if not favorite movie, is Field of Dreams. We use his intro when we do the Mariners opening day montage, and we build it around that. It's a movie I watch every single year on the eve. This is so corny. On the eve of opening day. I watch every year. And, you know, it is, to me, there are some speeches in movies. But I think his speech in Field of Dreams is probably my favorite of all time.
People will come, Ray. They'll come to Iowa for reasons they can't even fathom. They'll turn up your driveway, not knowing for sure why they're doing it. They'll arrive at your door as innocent as children, longing for the past. Of course, we won't mind if you look around, you'll say. It's only $20 per person. They'll pass over the money without even thinking about it. For it is money they have and peace they like.
Ray, just sign the papers.
And they'll walk out to the bleachers. Sit in shirt sleeves on a perfect afternoon. They'll find they have reserved seats somewhere along one of the baselines where they sat when they were children and cheered their heroes. And they'll watch the game. And it'll be as if they'd dipped themselves in magic waters. The memories will be so thick, they'll have to brush them away from their faces.
Ray, when the bank opens in the morning, they'll foreclose.
People will come, Ray.
You're broke, Ray. You sell now or you lose everything.
The one constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball. America has rolled by like an army of steamrollers. It's been erased like a blackboard, rebuilt and erased again. But baseball has marked the time. This field, this game, is a part of our past, Ray. It reminds us of all that once was good, and it could be again. Oh, people will come, Ray. People will most definitely come.
I mean, how do you not like that? How do you not love that speech? How does the hair not stand up on your arms when you hear that? James Earl Jones, what an incredible actor, and an incredible loss for just the entertainment community, the movie community, just everyone. And he was sensational. So many great movies that James Earl Jones did in his time, and that one was certainly one of the best speech I've ever probably heard in a movie. All right, that is Hey What the Puck. It's brought to you by Restoration One of North Seattle, your restoration company that lets you avoid the stress of water, fire, and mold damage with their property restoration services, locally owned and operated. Give them your call when damages affect your residential or commercial property, 206-817-8917. Ask for Trent. He'll get back to you right away. You can visit them online at restoration1.com. If you're watching this, click on the QR code. For you listeners, just go back to the video. You can see the QR code or go to restoration1.com. All right, that's it. Tuesday edition of the Daily Puck Drop. Coming up tomorrow on Wednesday's show, Jim comes back. So we'll have Jim Moore with us, the go-to guy from Bend, Oregon. Never know where he's going to be. Never know what his dogs are going to be doing. Also, we'll have Ryan Divish. Seattle Times will be on tomorrow. Get the very latest on the M's as they play the Padres tonight, as they continue to chase down, try to get to the playoffs. And then also Danny Kelly will be making his debut on Puck Sports. Danny Kelly from The Ringer, covering NFL and fantasy football. Danny, it's amazing. Is it 2024? Yeah. Danny, why did I forget the year? I don't know. Danny Kelly and I did a podcast with Scott Inyart for Field Goals probably 15 years ago. And we've come full, and no one really at that time was doing this. And now here we are doing something very similar. So we'll talk to Danny coming up tomorrow. Looking forward to that. Thank you to all of our guests that joined us today. John Canzano, Rob Staton, Bill Krueger. All of this will be up and podcasted soon, very shortly. Try to get everything up here by 1 o'clock here for you on all the different platforms. It will be up on YouTube if you want to rewatch it. Listen to it on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. Please like and subscribe and everywhere. Leave comments. I try to get to most of the comments that I do, because I'm an idiot and I haven't figured out how to do it on Twitter yet, is on YouTube, and I've been interacting with a lot of people on YouTube. So please go there. I'll jump on. I'll try to do a chat with you guys as much as possible during the show. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, we promise to be better.
No shirt, no shoes, no ties.
Would anybody like to smoke some pot?
Yeah. I was born to love you. I was born to lick your face. I was born to rob you. But you were born to rub me first.
What do you need my address for? We'd like to send out a mailer.
Mother of mercy, I don't speak Japanese!